A diminishing number of very dedicated people put a vast amount of hard work in desperately difficult conditions just so that we can stuff our faces with fish and chips without sparing a thought for the guys who caught them. And although these fish and chips are absolutely mouth-wateringly brilliant, what a shame the Radio Times doesn't have a scratch pack so we can smell them. It seems to me, though, that despite the Sea Fish Industries Authority much vaunted train which took kippers and frozen prawns around the country, and their, shall we say, dynamic "Hey Mama, won't you buy some fish" commercial, whatever it is, that the average person's perception of fish is still cod, haddock and plaice, which is a pity. Every Friday morning, Rob and Christine Hinchcliffe get up at dawn to drive their fish van the 200 miles from Grimsby to London. Jobs in the northeast are scarce, so they have to travel to sell their fish in the wealthy suburbs of Hampstead and Highgate, where rocketing rents and rates have killed off most of the wet fish shops. So they set up their little trailer and stand there in all weathers, all temperatures, for 5 or 6 or 7 hours to sell this stuff.
You've got to really have a sense of humour for something like that, because it could be very miserable if you didn't. You don't think about it too much, because if you did, you wouldn't get up, I suppose.
Like a lot of people, most of Rob and Christine's customers wouldn't even know where to find Grimsby on the map, let alone understand the blood, sweat and tears that have gone into getting them their fish. So at their suggestion, this film was made.
Rob!
No. Okay.
Right, that's it.
Get your fish in then.
Yeah, I've got everything sorted out here. That's okay then.
Can you manage that?
Yeah, see you later. Bye, have a good day.
It was Easter week in Grimsby, the big week of the year down dock, when supplies and prices are supposed to be at their best. This year's been a total disaster, though. Gale-force winds have stopped local boats from going out, and only Icelandic or Norwegian all-weather boats could land, yet another arrow in the quiver of the fishermen's complaints. And to cap it all, the dock labour force, commonly known as lumpers, are involved in a dispute and aren't unloading any fish.
Have we missed anything off? No, don't think so.
You've got your fish case, haven't you?
Got my fish cakes?
You're dry?
Oh, they're on there.
Don't tell him I said that.
Kurt Christiansen is a fish auctioneer and vessel agent. He's grappling with the problem of where to land his boats and how to get the catch back to Grimsby.
OK then, John. That. It all gets so involved. It all happened well before I was even born, and this is what annoys me, which is that my work is being hindered by a rule that existed years before. What it boils down to is it's more or less a job for life for the labour force, and that means that any vessel landing in Grimsby, apart from inshore vessels, have got to be landed by registered labour who are in the NDLB scheme. It's the same as container berths round about. Some are in the NDLB scheme and some aren't. Now, maybe in 1946 or 1950, as I said, when we had a huge fleet of distant water and middle water ships where it was physically impossible for the crews to land those fish, then yes, you had to have a labour force to land the vessels. But we no longer have a deep water section, we no longer have a middle water fleet. All we're left with is what is basically an inshore fleet. And we have this anomaly where you can have two vessels exactly the same size. One is registered inshore and lands once every 6 days and can land his own fish, exactly the same size of vessel who's seine netting, probably going out for 12 days, can't land his own fish. We sink or swim by our own efforts. If we don't work hard enough, we don't get paid. If a fisherman goes to sea and catches no fish, he doesn't get paid because he's on a share. We generate our income on a commission basis, which means that if the ships are earning nothing, we're earning nothing. So, you know, this is where we think it's unfair, that some people should have this guaranteed wage and a job for life, when we've got to go out and invest everything we've got, our homes and our livelihood and everything else, in an industry where if you catch. I mean, fishing's good. When fishing's good, it's really good, and when it's bad, it's pretty annoying.
If a vessel is at sea for more than 13 tides, the catch has to be unloaded by the lumpers, and any crew landing their own fish face court action. Kurt's brother Olaf is the skipper of the Soraya.
There is in actual fact a law in this land that says that we cannot dispense with the lumpers. So in actual fact, the fishermen that want to work from Grimsby are in basic servitude. You know, they have to hire people to do this, and when they are on strike, then the fishermen, you know, the catches are left to rot. And as I say again, unless they decide to land their own fish and break the law, which of course, I mean, you do without thinking, because I mean, nobody wants to break the law, but again, if it's your livelihood, you do it. You've got responsibilities, you've got your family to support, haven't you?
The lumpers were locked in negotiations and only had this to say.
At the moment, we are locked out by our employers because they cannot afford to pay us. In any court of land, they will say we are locked out.
Being on strike?
Yes, to a certain degree, because they don't know the facts relating to the situation we're in.
The lumpers had been asked to accept a 23% reduction in pay, but were back at work the following Monday.
They're all Grimsby. I mean, you don't blame them on the one hand. I mean, they're scared to death that they actually have to compete for the work, you see. This is the problem. So, I mean, they're all local lads and that. We know most of them. So, I mean, you can't really say you hate them, because I don't, but, you know, you question the thoughts a little bit. You wonder what the hell they're thinking, because they're just pushing themselves and everybody else onto the dough. I mean, we won't, the fishermen. We'll just go somewhere else and land. But I think it's a bit stupid when you've got a port that needs work and there's 40 guys who's probably stopping 2,000 jobs being created overnight. It's ridiculous.
A lot of the fish on the Humber has been landed in Hull at the moment because they have no labour problems, and so the vessels that should have been landing in Grimsby are being diverted. That's a bigger class of vessel, the Icelandic trawlers and so on, have been landing in Hull, and we've been relying predominantly on overland from Iceland, Scotland, Denmark and the south coast, and some of the local vessels have been coming in and probably landing their own fish.
Most of the Grimsby boats are classed as inshore boats and only do short trips. This one's on what they laughingly call a day trip, but it's 24 hours of solid slog. John Hancock is skipper of the Sarah H, specialising in longline fishing with a crew of 4.
We usually turn out a couple of hours before we sail and start baiting the lines, like, to give us a head start. All 4 of us are baiting while the skipper's chopping bait. It's basically a 4-hour or a 5-hour steam, and then when you arrive at the grounds, 3 of us rig the gear up, start shooting while one man carries on baiting. And then it's all grab a line, bait a line. You're non-stop all the time baiting, trying to keep ahead of yourselves all the time. You get wet, you get, if it's really bad weather, like, you usually have to change your gear perhaps once or twice a day, like, you know, because you get so wet. But it's a job, the job's hard, but you just put up with it, because it's all you know.
It's hard work, but you get a lot of job satisfaction out of the job itself. At times you can earn a lot of money, at other times you earn no money at all. When you get good trips, you get a kick out of it. You know, you get a lot of job satisfaction. And then being my own boss, which is a big bonus as well, you see. All fishermen tend to think that the grass is greener on the other side. All types of fishing are very hard. We like ours for basically short trips, top quality fish, top quality prices.
Fishing is a hazardous business. Every 8 days, a British fisherman is either lost at sea or seriously hurt. John came pretty close to it last year.
Yeah, we had a nasty experience last November. Bob fell over the side because I tried to grab him and reach him and fell on top of him. So, as far as that goes, yeah, it's very dangerous. It's just have to be accepted as part of the job, you see. I wouldn't be a miner, or I wouldn't go down the mines. It's everybody to their own.
Now it's 5 to 2, and here's the shipping forecast issued by the Met Office at 1305. There are warnings of gale in Dogger, German Bight, Humber, Thames, Dover, White, Portland, Plymouth, Biscay, Trafalgar, Finisterre, Seoul.
I always have Radio 4 on when I've got no customers. I rely on Radio 4.
Hebrides, Bailey, Darrows.
My 2 brothers went to sea,
The general synopsis is
and my stepfather went to sea. My own father lost his life catching fish. And my uncles on my mother's side. My stepfather's father went to sea. So all the family, really.
24 hours. Viking, northward Tiller, southward Tiller, 40s promises, 4 times.
2 and 2.
Back to the east, 540, increasing 7, perhaps gale 8 later in 40s. Wintry showers.
You'll hear more about the increase in the price of fish than the number of boats that are lost. Only 3 weeks ago, a freak storm claimed 3.
Well, a few weeks ago we lost them 3 boats when it was really bad weather. And they were lucky to get the men off them. It just as quick as that. Just suddenly blew up in the North Sea and they were caught fishing and 3 of the boats went down. So, you know, there's no joy out there. There's no joy for them, there's no joy for us in working down here, but it's a way of life. Dad was a fisherman, that's the only contact that was. He was a fisherman. But in them days, when I was 14 or 15, that's all there was in Grimsby, was fish. Nothing else. It used to employ thousands of people, not just the people who buy the fish and fillet it, but the people who service the trawlers, put provisions aboard, ice them up, clean them, paint them, repair them. The whole port was absolutely thriving.
I've been fishing myself, and you have, Roy, haven't you?
Yeah, I've been fishing.
We've both been fishing. Only a short spell, though. Believe you me, that's harder work than this. It's very, very cold in the winter. Mind you, this is a mild winter, what we're just experiencing now. Can have some cold ones, though.
Yeah, we have a time when the fish freezes on the board, actually freezes, and you have to prise it loose. Or you leave your knife and that freezes on the board. When it gets really bad, I mean, you can see what conditions are here. I mean, it's nice today, but you get the North Sea wind blowing through here, wide open, middle of winter, freezing cold, working with fish that you can't heat up, you've got to work it cold. It's not easy. When you've had a few years at it, you can stand it, put it that way.
Wednesday is show day. It was traditionally the busiest day of the year on the dock, when the merchants bought the fresh fish for Good Friday, in the days before freezers, of course. In spite of the labour problems, there's enough fish for this morning's auction. The fish disappears at great speed, and you can't make head nor tail of how it gets bought or sold. Richard learnt the mysterious business from his father, Eric Macklem.
Well, initially I stood in the sail, and my father stood behind me, and he bid on my shoulder with a touch of the finger, and I then bid on the salesman's shoulder. So the bid was transmitted, and I learned to understand the value of when to start and when to stop.
You feel nervous in the beginning to make decisions quickly. You must realise that if you hesitate, it's too late, it's all happened. It happens so quickly as you'll notice. So you've got to give a young man the confidence to make his own judgment.
People bid by all sorts of methods. It isn't quite conducted in the same manner as Sotheby's, of course. We do get some unusual comments at times. But we take bids by... People bid before the sale, and those bids we use, and people bid at the sales either in front of you by winking or nodding their head or touching your back or your side. There's all methods of bidding.
You could be kicking him on the ankle, or conversely, you could be so far out in the crowd that you couldn't get near him, so you'd have to shout or wave your hand or nod your head or whatever.
Funnily enough, I find that somebody can shout 5 John and I can write the name in the book. just on hearing a voice. It's just knowing the people. I suppose basically we are a small, close community.
Obviously, if there are 200 of us trying to buy 50 boxes, then it's first in, best fed.
The auctioneer has